Well, you and the Prime Minister have been touting the need to have sovereign supply and how important that is. We're only one of 10 nations, but what good is having sovereign supply if you cannot use it to vaccinate 2/3 of your population? 6.5 million Australians are under the age of 50.
Well, I see what we have now, of course, is over 8 million Australians. There would be very little international supply of the AstraZeneca, even under these conditions. We've seen that that has been the case, and we predicted that there were risks on the international supply. So the vaccine that was both at the top of the list for effectiveness and safety on the advice as it was at the time, and for the capacity to produce in Australia was the AstraZeneca. It still plays a very important part in protecting our most vulnerable Australians, the over 70s, the over 50s, and then at the same time we have the international procurement. And so you run on all fronts, and that's both on the vaccines that are advised and then on the vaccines that can be secured and produced. And much of the rest of the world is struggling with vaccine supply. Right now, we have very significant vaccine supplies coming in. We have the weekly doses of Pfizer and we have the CSL doses.
We're not running, we didn't hedge our bets, did we, enough perhaps back in September. We have got contracts with 3 vaccines, 4 when you look at the COVAX, the central body there. Should we have done more deals with more vaccine suppliers?
Well, respectfully, there were 5 agreements, and nobody knew which vaccines would be successful. There had never been an mRNA vaccine that was produced for any type of condition, and there had never been a coronavirus vaccine. And so the advice was to do 5 deals across 4 different companies, plus the international COVAX facility, and 3 different classes of vaccine. So the Pfizer for mRNA, the AstraZeneca for viral vector, the Novavax for what's called a protein vaccine, and the University of Queensland molecular clamp. All of them. All of them were Novavax? Based on medical advice and all. Novavax. That's correct. The advice that we have is that it's within the 3rd quarter. That awaits, however, clinical trials and regulatory approval. And that was always set up as potentially a second option if any of the first round vaccines were not able to be used, and as the capacity for a booster if additional vaccines or vaccinations were required in a subsequent year. And it's playing its part. The trials, the early stage trial data, which I had reaffirmed on a call only yesterday with the Global Vice President, was of 100% effectiveness in terms of prevention of serious illness, hospitalisation and loss of life. And so this pandemic poses challenges for the whole world every day. There's a new challenge for the whole world now. Probably the principal international vaccine now has to be adapted in its usage, and different countries are responding, but we're following the medical advice, which has put us in one of the most enviable positions. And then we have, as I say, 20 million Pfizer over the course of the year. The principal program remains unchanged. The medical advice on safety for the over 50s remains very clear and very strong. And I think it's important to put all of this in perspective of a country that is operating freely, operating without COVID, knows how to respond to cases, and all Australians will have the opportunity to be vaccinated.
Well, here's some
perspective. There are some changes.
Yeah, there are.
But that's what we have to face.
Here's some perspective as well, that the UK is on the brink of herd immunity, and we have 4% of our population here in Australia vaccinated.
5 in Australia, and UK, of course, has very sadly had 126,000 lives lost, and that herd immunity has come at the most horrific human toll unimaginable, a scale of loss which was beyond the worst of our expectations. And I've spoken with health officials and friends in the UK, and the agony that they've gone through is something that we have been most mercifully spared.
Absolutely.
There's been heartache in Australia, but the difference is unimaginable.
Okay, well, we're getting the vaccines. Look, we'll agree to disagree that the rollout is slower than we would like. But if you're asking everyone to
the rollout
get
has been dictated by the supply.
Yes, exactly. If you're asking everyone to be vaccinated, why? What will it allow them to do? What freedoms will it bring, Minister?
Well, vaccination firstly protects each of us as individuals against serious illness, hospitalisation or loss of life. Secondly, my vaccination protects you, and my vaccination protects older Australians and people who are vulnerable. And so it was put to me by somebody at an event. He said, this is one of those rare occasions where every Australian can help protect every other Australian. And it was a very simple explanation. And
it is
every
great,
Australian
but does it mean
can help
no more
protect
lockdowns?
every other Australian.
Does it mean international travel? What does it mean?
Of course it opens up all of those issues in terms of the capacity to move freely, the capacity to prevent outbreaks, the capacity to have greater movement. Well, we'll revise now what this means for the program timing, for the fundamental part of phase 1B, the over 70s and over 80s, and for the fundamental part of phase 2A, the over 50s and over 60s, no change. For the under 50s, there is. So we'll do that. The meetings are going on with the states. I've been speaking with the AMA and the College of GPs over the yesterday, and in particular again this morning, having spoken with the presidents of both of those organisations. They're very supportive of the rollout. They recognise that we have to adapt, and we have had to adapt as a nation. What set Australia apart is we've been able to adapt perhaps more effectively than many other nations in a way which has literally saved thousands and thousands of lives and allowed us to lead a far freer existence than those nations which are experiencing deep, profound, prolonged lockdowns, even as we speak.
Yep, and we had one just in Brisbane for 3 days just last week. Minister, I know you've got to get to National Cabinet, so I'll leave it there. We'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Laura. You take care.